The Oklahoma City Thunder are a good chunk of the NBA fan base's League Pass team going into the season. I feel like everybody has the Thunder at the top of their list. Not only that, I'm pretty sure everybody has the Thunder making some sort of big leap to 50 wins even, especially in a tight Western Conference. And I was going to do a video on the Thunder, but as I thought deeper about it, looked into stuff, looked at more of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander because he was one of my favorite players to watch last year, I realized I just wanted to do a video on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But in particular, as I kept getting deeper, I ended up landing on wanting to do a video on the sweet spots that made Shai Gilgeous-Alexander take a giant scoring leap. In the 2021-22 season, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander averaged 24.5 points per game, and then last year, he took a leap to 31.4 points per game. Not only that, his field goal percentage was the highest of his career, and he sort of repurposed where he took his shots on the floor and became a master at it. And in particular, in the mid-range. And through deep diving, I ended up wanting to do a video on how Shai Gilgeous-Alexander creates space in the mid-range and how he became a master at it last year, which led him to a first-team All-NBA selection, a top 5 MVP finish. But there's a sweet spot within that mid-range area that I want to get into, and specifically two of my favorite Shai Gilgeous-Alexander moves that he's kind of used as a secret weapon now. And with his ability to get to the rim and his ability to create space in the mid-range and his herky-jerky style and his footwork and all of that, he's just become a wizard at it. So I wanted to talk about that briefly. So per Cleaning the Glass, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander took 40% of his shots at the rim last year, which is a 6% jump from the previous year, and then the previous year before that was 42%. So he's back up in the 40 range. But look at the shot distribution in the mid-range, and all mid-range specifically. And then we break it down into sections. The long mid-range, he's taken a lot more shots from there this past year. And then in the short mid-range, he took a little bit more shots from there as well. And he sort of just decided to live in that area, which he can afford to do, because when it comes to accuracy, he is one of the elite mid-range shot makers in the NBA, as you can see on the screen up here per Cleaning the Glass. And he's just made it a point that I'm just going to live in the paint and I'm going to create space being close to the basket as possible. And while, yes, he did shoot, 41% from three at one point in his career, that was a few years ago. That was in the 2020-21 season. And then the three-pointer kind of took a little bit of a dip. He sort of just not erased it completely from his game, but he found a more effective area, and that helped his efficiency. That helped his just ability to be unguardable. And I feel like once he starts, taking a bit more threes, I think 2.5 is a little low, but I mean, hell, it works. But if he could get back up to that 35, 36, 37% range, then we're really looking at something fucking scary. Like, basically, if he could combine his three-point percentage and his three-point attempts from the 2020-21 season to now and apply that to now going into this year, he's going to be even more unstoppable. But let's look at how Shai Gilgeous-Alexander dominates the mid-range. I mentioned earlier he has two moves that I like, and that's kind of the genesis of this video, because I was just constantly amazed last year at how Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was able to shed defenders and create space to get his shot off. He's also 6'6". People underrate the fact that he is a big point guard. So whenever SGA does get a size mismatch, which is 90% of the time, he could just shoot over them. He can bully them down on the low block a little bit. He took a few turnaround mid-range fadeaways last year, just shooting over the top of a defender. Or if a big switch is onto him, that's when he gets into his handle bag, which Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has one of the more underrated handles in the NBA. And he's able to create space with his de-acceleration, herky-jerky style footwork, being able to use all these pivots and pump fakes and being able to get defenders leaning one way or another so he can pivot back the other way. It's just crazy. His two most used moves in the mid-range, though, is one, he is one of the best in the NBA, and all superstars do this, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is no different. He is a master at the subtle I wouldn't say push off, but the subtle put my shoulder into you. And he is really good at not extending that off arm to the point where the refs have to call a foul. As a matter of fact, half the time he barely even lifts his forearm to create space, but he's very strong. He's very good at using that shoulder to create space and not extending the forearm so that he can step back and shoot his mid-range. And that's part one of his step back game. The other part is his snatchback crossover, which I noticed that's become a thing that defenders just get their feet stuck in the mud whenever they're guarding this guy. You wouldn't think of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as having top-end speed like a De'Aaron Fox or, a Ja Morant, but he is still very athletic, and his first step is among the best in the NBA. And whenever he decides to hit the gas and accelerate really quickly, he gets defenders leaning just off that first step, and then he's able to just snatch it back. And there are just some times where he makes defenders look silly. He'll pull it back on a crossover between his legs, or he'll cross back over going behind the back. And whether it's a wing or a poor big man that just happened to be caught on a switch out on the perimeter, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is just shedding that guy and getting to an easy mid-range jumper. I mean, just take a minute to look at some of these. This is just mastery. And there are even some clips where he'll make a shot and he'll turn to the crowd or turn to his teammates and give that face like, yeah, you can't guard me, that guy can't guard me type of thing. And you could just tell he's very comfortable with his level of mastery in the mid-range, and it leads to a bunch of counters too because of his ability to get to the rim and his handle. He can do the sidestep, he can pivot back and then pivot back in. He has all these type of counters that spawn from the fact that he's just very shifty and his handle is very nasty, and people just can't get a handle on this guy. That's also why he took nearly 11 free throw attempts per game this past season, which is over 3 more than the previous season. In the 2021-22 season, he took 7 free throws a game. So he has just mastered everything in the mid-range, it seems like. He can only get better from that area. And when you think about it, his mastery of the mid-range makes sense because him and Chris Paul were teammates on that 2019-20 Oklahoma City Thunder team that was very underrated and honestly a fun team to watch. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has talked about Chris Paul's impact on his development and how close they are and how they still talk to this day. So it's very cool to, one, see Shai Gilgeous-Alexander absorb information from an all-time great, and now he's applying it, and it led to a year where he finished top 5 in MVP voting and first team All-NBA, and he was already really good the previous years, but this upcoming season, he's going to be looking to establish himself as a consistent superstar that's going to be consistently in the awards conversations, the All-NBA conversations for years to come. And if you look at his FIBA tournament and kind of project what that's going to look like going into this year, I can't wait to see what he adds to his game this year. There's a reason why everybody wants to watch the Oklahoma City Thunder this year. There's young talent from Josh Giddey to Jalen Williams to guys they took a chance on like Isaiah Joe. You even got Cason Wallace coming in this year. And you got number 2 overall pick Chet Holmgren coming in this year to play for the first time after having not played the previous year. And all on top of that sits an MVP caliber player and somebody who is the face of the Oklahoma City Thunder franchise. A franchise, by the way, that has had a long list of some very notable faces and superstars leading that franchise. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is next.